As I said, Beacon Power is the latest U.S. alternative energy casualty that has filed for bankruptcy after getting loans from the U.S. government. It received $43 million as a loan guarantee from the Obama administration's Clean Energy Program. And of course, there was the solar panel maker Solyndra that went belly up a couple months ago. Now, that one could cost taxpayers $500 million. Now, Solyndra wasn't alone for solar panel makers declaring bankruptcy. Two other U.S. companies declared bankruptcy around the same time. One of the reasons, they said they simply could not compete with China. Also, the Financial Times today reports a deal to build a $10 billion oil refinery in Saudi Arabia is expected to be signed soon. Now, this deal will go to China, and that's after a U.S. company pulled out last year. Now, this is tapped in this report as a sign of more than just one deal, but as a sign that Middle Eastern oil-rich countries are shifting away from Washington. Now, the U.S. has fought wars in this part of the world over oil, but you do not have to take my word for it. Just listen to former UN Ambassador John Bolton.
Iran has made little secret of its desire to gain hegemony in the region of the Persian Gulf, the critical oil and natural gas producing region that we fought so many wars to try and protect our economy and from the adverse impact of losing that supply or having it available only at very high prices.
Did you catch that? That the U.S. has fought so many wars to protect oil and the prices that the U.S. pays for it. So our big question with all of this news that comes out is who is winning and who is losing in this global resource grab, in this move for sustainable economies with energy and oil sources. Joining me now to talk about it is Dr. Stephen Lieb. He is Chief Investment Officer at Lieb Capital Management, and he is author of this book, among others. It's Red Alert: How China's Growing Prosperity Threatens the American Way of Life. He's just the guy to talk about all of this. Dr. Lieb, thank you for being on this show. So first, because you wrote the book on it, it's about America and China, your book. So as far as resources, who's doing a better job acquiring them?
Well, I think that it's just overwhelmingly in favor of China right now. And so overwhelmingly, I think that even the problems you're seeing in the developed world right now, including Greece, including the United States, including Europe, you can really trace to the fact that resource prices are extremely high, much higher relative to incomes of lower income people than they've ever been before. In 2011, with virtually no growth in the developed world, virtually every important commodity will average higher than they've ever averaged before. Average gasoline prices in the U.S. will be the highest ever, almost assuredly, in 2011, as an example. Ditto for corn, ditto for copper. And the reason that this is happening is China. They are consuming and acquiring and accumulating every resource they possibly can. And just to give you one idea why they may be doing this, I mean, if you don't believe me, think about this. Goldman Sachs, I think 2 or 3 or 4 days ago, put out a report on copper, which is utterly critical for drilling for oil, critical for putting up buildings, critical for, you name it, electric grids, etc. Their words were copper in 3 years could be unimaginably, that's their word, unimaginably high. Think of what that will mean for the developed world and the U.S. and Europe and all those other countries outside of China. Why not China? Because China right now, as we speak, is mining as much copper as they possibly can. While we're fighting a war in Afghanistan, a shooting war, they actually are spending comparable money, billions of dollars, mining copper. They have set up a massive infrastructure, a paramilitary, and in a way, I mean, this is how bad it gets. In a way, they're actually using our war to distract the Afghanis. That's not intentional. But I mean, most of what China does is not directed against us, but directed for China. Way I see it is that there is a war going on in this world right now, and it's a war for resources. We're not fighting it. We really don't even know it exists. China is fighting it with all the cunning and all the skills and all the people that they have. And if we don't wake up soon enough, I fear for our standard of living, our way of life, the whole shebang. And I think these kinds of protests that you're seeing right now come from the fact that gasoline and other necessities of life just cost the typical person massive percentage of their income. They have virtually no money left over to do other things.
Of course, anyone that fills up their car with gas can definitely see that. But you mentioned that this is a war over resources, and the United States isn't fighting it. But the United States is fighting some other wars. It's fighting wars in Afghanistan, wars in Iraq, where it's invested, in the case of Iraq, $3 trillion, depending on who you talk to. In Afghanistan, hundreds of billions of dollars. China, in those countries, you mentioned the copper in Afghanistan. In Iraq, they've spent $3.4 billion on energy, $2.1 billion on power. Which is a better return on investment, war or these contracts for energy, power, and copper?
Well, I think obviously what they're doing is going to be a much better return on investment, and it's going to probably assure them they're doing the best they can to assure their people a decent life in this century. We want to do the same thing, but we just don't realize what the risks are, and we have to wake up. And as far as oil goes, I mean, you mentioned that China just signed a $10 billion deal with Saudi Arabia to build a refinery there. I mean, they are gaining control of these vital parts of the world. And here's the prediction. If China has enough aircraft carriers so that they can drop enough people into Saudi Arabia to protect their oil fields, you'll see the Saudis no longer price oil in terms of dollars. They'll be pricing oil in terms of gold and in terms of yuan. And if that happens, inflation in this country is going to go crazy. I think the stakes right now are about as high as they've ever been. I think the risk-reward right now, when we look ahead the next 5 years or so, are about the same as if we were fighting or on the verge of fighting a shooting war. It's that serious. I mean, our whole style of life, I really believe, is at stake, and I really think you're seeing evidence of it. Median incomes in this country fell 10% between 2007 and 2011. That's amazing. And if you look at the median income of, let's say, the lower 90% of this country, it probably fell 15% during that period.
Right.
We can't grow with the kind of headwinds we have.
Right, and Dr. Lieb, you mentioned Saudi Arabia, and they have a new crown prince, which is believed to be more critical of the United States. Already in the reports I've been reading, it's believed that Saudi Arabia is looking a little bit more to Beijing than Washington when it comes to oil. You're making a bold prediction. When do you think that's going to happen, or what would need to happen in order for what you're saying to play out?
For the Saudis to start pricing oil in terms of the yuan, the
Yes.
Chinese currency,
Exactly.
and in terms of gold, some combination, I'll tell you exactly what it would take. It would take assurances that China can protect the Saudi oil fields. Right now, they don't have the equipment, the aircraft carriers. They have one. If they have 2 or 3 or 4, they would be able to drop enough troops into Saudi Arabia to protect their oil fields. Once that happens, there is absolutely no reason for the Saudis to kowtow to the Americans. The only reason they're doing that right now is because of the military umbrella we provide them. China is catching up very, very quickly. It could be 3, it could be 4 years, it could be 2 years. I'm not sure when. But de facto right now, China is probably more important to Saudi Arabia than the U.S. I mean, and just as a sidebar, China right now is actually showing Saudi Arabia how to desalinate their waters using solar energy. And, you know, it goes on and on. China has an ironclad grip right now on probably the 2 most important renewable energies out there. Not that they're going to solve all our problems, but they control. You were mentioning that Solyndra and other solar energy companies are going bankrupt in this country.
Right.
At Evergreen, which a few years ago was trading at 120, it's now trading at 3 cents. This is all courtesy of China underbidding everybody. They now control 60% of the solar energy industry. De facto, they completely control the wind industry, because you cannot build wind turbines and scale them up without heavy rare earths, of which China has 97%.
I know, they have most of it. And as you mentioned with the solar panels, now you have solar panel companies in the U.S. asking for tariffs because they can't compete with China. There is so much more I want to get into, Stephen Lieb, so I'm going to ask you to stick around. We're going to get right back to all of this in just a couple minutes. That was Stephen Lieb, an author and chief investment officer at Lieb Capital Management. We will have more with him in just a minute.